Welcome to Hope at Night, featuring Nelson Quijano, Marco Topete, Q&A with our live audience, and host Anil Kanda. Today's episode, can your worst moments become your greatest Thanksgiving? And here's your host, Anil Kanda.
It's that time of the year when most of us want to be full, and I'm not talking about your stomachs. I'm talking about your heart. More than just being full with food, the best Thanksgivings are when we are filled with gratitude. It's not always easy to be grateful, unless perhaps you're a pet turkey belonging to a family of vegetarians. But it's also easy to overlook past blessings that we are often taking for granted. Our first guest tonight survived civil war, a near execution, and a case of mistaken identity that almost got him killed. Times weren't always easy, but he has a story to share with us tonight. Please welcome to Hope at Night, Nelson Quijano. Nelson, I'm glad you're here.
Thank you, Anil.
How do you pronounce your last name?
Quijano.
Quijano. It sounds like Keanu Reeves.
Yes.
Keanu. So we're glad you're here today.
Thank you.
Now, I understand you grew up in El Salvador. Could you tell us a little bit about your upbringing?
Well, I grew up in El Salvador. It was a different type of environment if we talk about the United States living. But I grew up in a home where we shared together with my mother, with my dad, with my brothers and sisters. And we had a rough time because of the Civil War.
That's very interesting. I know we'll talk about the Civil War in a little bit, but you got really sick at the age of 10. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
When I was 10 years old, I had a swollen neck right here. The doctor said if in 5 days the swollen neck wouldn't come down, I have to go back and do a surgery. When I went back home, the swelling went down, but then I was sick for a month and a half in bed. While I was sick, my mom used to pray a lot. I thought I was gonna die by that time. When I grew up, stand up, I remember I used to grab my hair from the back just to stand up and drink some water. That's how bad I was. And then one of the prayers that my mom said, if you heal my son, he's gonna be a pastor.
She was making plans for your life,
She
huh?
was making plans. I don't know if it was she or it was God, but something was happening right there.
So did you eventually recover?
I eventually recovered, yeah.
Okay.
It took me about 3 months after.
Okay.
And I got so skinny. I mean, so skinny. You could think about a stick, like this type of stick right here. That's how skinny I got.
Wow.
And I got recovered and then keep on studying.
But during that time you got sick, you remember your mom's prayers, specific prayers for you.
All the time. All the time. I saw my mom crying loud out to God and saying, heal him. Just give him to do something to him. Yeah.
That's a woman who prays.
Yeah.
Now, coming back to El Salvador, you grew up during a time of civil war. What was that like?
It was something very sad, very sad. I mean, I saw a lot of people being killed. I used to go to public school in the 6th grade, and when we used to go to the window, we used to see the communists and the military fighting each other. And one day, they start fighting near to our church, near to our school, I mean. And this man, he just grabbed a gun, pulled it out right next to his neck, and he just went down. That's all that we saw as kids. Near my home, they killed like about 12 persons. And they took their head out, they put it right in the middle, and all the bodies just making like a circle and making like a sun around. That's how bad it was.
So you were witnessing gruesome death and violence all around you. How old were you at the time?
I'm talking about 10, 11 years old.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, you eventually became a teenager. Your mom decided to do something. What did your mom tell you to do at age 14?
At the age of 14, my mom decided to go to send me to the U.S. The reason we were gonna get killed, the whole family. The whole family someone's from the communists. They want to knock the door. I was the one who opened the door. And I asked him, who is it? And he said, Daniel. This guy, Daniel, just to let you know, Anil, my grandma used to know him. My grandma gave some time for him to live in her house. And during that time, we didn't see him for about, I would say 10 years, I would say that. And one day he went and knocked the door. And when he knocked the door, I said, who is it? He said, Daniel. He says, oh, Daniel. So I opened the door. Me and my brothers, they were sitting in this room that we used to do our studies. And then my mom said, Danielito, come home, come in. When he went in, he said, I'm coming and kill all of you guys. He pulled out the gun. He started counting the bullets. He said, this is for Nelson, this is for Maribel, this is for Sergio, this is for Walter, this is for Mira, this is for Araceli, that's my mom's name, and this is for Jesus. This is my dad's name. He was working by that time. And he said, get everybody against the wall. So we all stand up against the wall. And can I stand right here?
Yes.
I was standing like this, and I had my older brother right next to me. There was a small stick of iron right next to me. And then he pulled out a gun. He put the gun to my brother, my older brother. And he couldn't do the trigger. He couldn't pull it out for some reason. Huh. But at that time, there was my mom praying again. Huh. She was praying, say out loud. She was saying, God, kill me, but not my sons. Not my sons. So when he did the second time, the gun didn't went out. The bullet didn't went out. And then my brother said, there is this iron stick right next to you. Give it back to me. Give it to me. And I told him, you crazy? He's going to kill me first. And then that's all what happened. I mean, the guy, he just looked at her. He guess, you're lucky that the other person didn't come in. And just don't go out. If you go out, all of you guys are going to get killed.
Who was this guy?
He was a man who used to live right next to our house.
Okay.
And man of the city. He used to live in our same community.
Right.
And we knew him. He used to go to church with us. But for some reason, he got into the communist crew. And after that, that's what happened.
They were just executing anyone who didn't go with them or believe like them.
I would say they probably got confused as with some family.
What'd your mom want to do with you?
Now, my mom and my dad, they decided to send us here to the U.S. But then we had to cross the border. But I'm talking about back in the 80s. So my grandma sent the money to El Salvador and told my mom and my dad, just bring them. Because by that time, during wartime, they used to send a little message to the house saying, get ready to be with the army at the age of 14, at the age of 12, at the age of 16.
They were trying to draft you into the military.
Yeah. So the mom and dad, they said, well, Nelson and Walter, we're going to send you to the U.S. You're just going to go to a little ride. That ride, it took me 20 years that I didn't see my mom and my dad. Yeah.
That's incredible.
I know we only worked like about 6 hours. Yeah. And we got into a boat, we got into a plane, we got to San Diego. Once we got to San Diego, my uncle went and picked me up, so took me to San Francisco, and that's what I lived for about 12 years. Yeah. It
seems that God has watched over your life ever since you were a young child.
You know, when you're saying that, let me read this up to you, please. Look, and I put it down. Luke 1:37 say, for nothing will be impossible with God. I mean, by the grace of God, I am what I am.
Right.
And nothing's impossible with God.
Right.
Nothing.
Sounds like when you were younger, you weren't really grateful. But then, looking back, it seems like you realize God has been in your life throughout this. Am I right about that?
Yes, you're right about that. I mean, God had never led me. I'm the one who led God.
Right.
When I got here, my parents got divorced at the age of 16. And that's when I had one foot out and one foot in the church. I never left the church. I always wasn't every Sabbath, every Wednesday, but I had one foot in, one foot out. And I used to go to discotheque. I used to do some dancing, some wild dance. And they got me confused. I used to live on my youth during the gangster thing back in the 80s when the low riders used to be.
Yeah.
That time they said with the beat, boom, boom, the Fat Boys are back, all that. Right. So they got a mistake with this gang guy. And it was 20 of them who wanted to kill me in a discotheque. I remember that time, I was sitting down, and I heard this voice saying, from God, saying, you don't belong here. When I got beat by those 20 guys, they didn't stop me, hitting me, beating me. And there was this Samoan guy, you know how big they are. He just pulled them out. He just grabbed me in the back. He took me to the restroom. I looked at the mirror of the rest of that time, and I told God, if this is the way that I'm going to go back to you, thank you, God. So when I got out of the discotheque, this cab just parked right in front of the big door. I just went in, and the 20 guys, they were waiting for me outside. And the driver, he just keep on driving in the freeway, and just took me home. When I asked him, how do you know the address? He just say, you don't belong here. I mean, don't ask me, I wasn't high. I was okay. All that I know, that God is on my path. God was there. Yeah, so I'm being grateful for God.
It definitely sounds like God, you know, there's a lot of interventions that took place, many ways that he saved you. And it seems like he sent angels in one form or the other, whether Samoan or cab drivers, right?
Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
It's really incredible. Here you are, you're talking about all the ways that God has worked in your life and, you know, all the experiences you have. And now you're looking back. Why do you think sometimes it's difficult to thank God when you're going through these things?
Well, sometimes it's hard for us to understand. We blame God.
Right.
And it's not God's choice. It's the way we decide. It's our decision. So sometimes I used to scream to God and tell him, where are you? Why you not helping me? Why my parents got divorced? Why we almost got killed? All those questions. But at the end of the tunnel, we only see a light. That's the light of Jesus telling you,
right,
I'm here for you. I have a plan for you.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Now, things also began to change for your life. What was this turning point in your life?
Well, when I was at that discotheque and that happened to me, I decided to go study theology in Costa Rica and become a pastor. I didn't want to be a pastor. I want to be an obstetrician. I mean, that's what I wanted to be. I have 2 daughters. They're studying medicine right now. And I told them, the study obstetrician. They say, that is my choice, not yours. And I have a son that is 10 years old. And for some reason, God moved me to Costa Rica to study theology. All that I know that I always hear in that voice, you don't belong here. It's my choice, not your choice. So I decided to go to Costa Rica, study theology. I never thought I was going to come back to the U.S. I took the Social Security card, and I ripped it off. And I said, we'll never go back to the U.S. 24 years after, God called me over here to work, to do my ministry over here.
Wow.
But God has been good. God has been so good.
That's wonderful just to see. Sometimes we make decisions in our life and we think, okay, I'm done here and not coming back here. Like you said, you ripped up your Social Security card, but it seems like God says, hey, I got U-turns for you.
And you know what, Anil? I don't know if you'll allow me to read this.
Sure.
But I think this is the Lord's answer. Jeremiah 15, 19, 21. So the Lord said, if you return, then I will let you take your place again, standing before me. And if you take out what is worth from what is not worth, then you will speak for me. Let these people turn to you, but you must not turn to them. Then I will make you like a strong wall of brass of these people. Even if they fight against you, they will not get power over you. For I am with you to save you and bring you out of trouble, says the Lord. I mean, I believe in those words. I know God has been with me since I was born. I couldn't understand his way. And I think his way will be all joy, all harmony. But our way, our decision, the way we think, that's when we screw God's path. And I believe that God wants the best for all of us.
That's right. It's during this Thanksgiving season we can think about all the things we're thankful for. Maybe, during Thanksgiving Day, people will have the turkey dinner or vegetarian turkey dinner, and they'll share one thing they're thankful for. But for the believer, Thanksgiving is not a day, it's a lifestyle.
Right.
It's something we do continually. Why is it that Thanksgiving is something that we easily forget about? Why do we have such ingratitude sometimes?
I think we always forget that God is always with us every single day of our life. And I know Thanksgiving is a good way to get it together with my family. And I know that's one of the things I always loved when I came to the U.S., the Thanksgiving, the dinner, to see my whole family. When I was 14 years old, I left my mom and my dad. I don't know if I'm not getting my tears, but I never saw mom and dad after that. I never saw them. And when I used to go and have dinner with different family, all that I know, that I was thankful to God that I was there with the family. But we should thank you with God every single day for our life because of what he had done for us every day, to our sons, to our daughters, to our families, to our parents.
That's really beautiful, Nelson. Especially when it comes to young people. You know, you were a young person, obviously. If you could tell yourself something, you know, as a young person, when you were a young person, what would you tell the younger version of you?
Don't give up. Don't give up. Stay firm. Don't you ever see what you had done, the bad things that you had done, don't regret it. I mean, just turn your back, embrace God, embrace Jesus, and let him guide you. And then your life will turn to a joyful way and to a better future.
That's beautiful. Thanks so much, Nelson, for sharing your beautiful story. We may not have had dramatic escapes from death like Nelson, but I think all of us have at various points in our lives also forgotten the blessings of our past, or at least taken them for granted. Even if you've fallen on hard times this Thanksgiving, take a moment to thank God for your past blessings, trusting that with God, with every test, there comes a testimony. Up next, we have another guest who has an amazing story to share on how he is grateful for grace. Don't go away. Welcome back to Hope at Night. We've been talking about being grateful, but what if you've squandered your blessings and made some really, really bad choices? Choices that have harmed not only you, but others. Our next guest hit rock bottom when he woke up in a hospital, handcuffed to his bed. The sheriff nearby informed him that he had killed his friend after drinking and driving. Cut to the core and facing years in prison, he thought his life was over. How could God possibly give him anything to be grateful for? Let's find out more about his journey from handcuffs to hope. Please welcome to Hope at Night, Marco Topete. Marco, I really like that beard, by the way. Now, you grew up in a very tough neighborhood. Could you tell us a little bit about your upbringing?
Grew up in the east side of San Jose, California, and it was unfortunately, it wasn't a unique situation. Single mom, working 2-3 jobs, and just really a rough side of town. My older brother kind of became like the father figure. Unfortunately, it was like the blind leading the blind because my older brother also got swept into gangs at that time. So he became like the man that I really wanted to be. So he was wearing certain colors. I started wearing those colors. He was saying certain things. I started to say those things and throwing up certain signs. And I was also throwing up those signs as well. So from a very young age, I think 10 years old was when I started smoking weed. Okay. And when I was 11 years old was the first time I took marijuana to school with the intention to sell it. And when I did my first sell ever, I still remember it, I thought to myself, man, this is easy money. And I get to get high.
How old were you?
11.
11 years old. Like, I literally became self-aware at age 18. Okay. I even existed. So at 11, you were a hustler. Yeah. You were dealing drugs. Yeah. Okay, what else was going on?
But that wasn't unique. I wasn't like the only kid on the block who was doing it. That's the crazy part about it. Is all the parents are all the homes in my neighborhood were single parent homes. They all had siblings who were incarcerated, part of the system, or institutionalized in prison, and it was just that's what it was. So it was normal. It wasn't crazy. The thought of being a hustler wasn't anything extravagant. It was actually really popular, glorified, and I became the cool kid for doing that. And the time that I realized that things needed to change was fast forward. Now I'm in high school, and my influence is kind of growing in high school. I went to a high school that had 4,000 students. And things started to kind of pick up. I remember one day after school, I was parking my car in front of my mom's house, and a car drove by. A couple of guys got out, and they were older. I was maybe a sophomore, early sophomore. What is that? Maybe 15 years old.
Yeah.
And these two men walked up to my mom's driveway, and they were looking in the window. And at that time, I turned around, I looked at these men, and one of them turned around, we made eye contact, and he said, "Are you Marco?" And I looked at him, and I was, I don't know who that is. And he said, "Does he live in this neighborhood?" I don't know a Marco. And that is when I knew that I needed to leave. So I walked into my mom's bedroom that night, and I told her that I needed a change.
Who do you think these guys were? Like a rival gang, other drug dealers?
I definitely know they weren't selling vacuums.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Not your average Girl Scouts
No.
Okay.
So I told my mom I needed to leave, and my mom reminded me, and I kind of reminded my mom at the same time, that my aunt, her eldest sister, who lived 3 hours away in Fresno, she always used to tell me that I could move in with her if I ever needed to. And I took her up on that offer, and she came through. And I packed up my bags and moved to Fresno.
What happened in Fresno?
Well, I didn't know what I was signing up for, because she also was the only Christian in our family, extended family. She had just become a Seventh-day Adventist Christian from Catholicism. And when I say just, maybe about 10 years before. And she was on fire for God. So I got there, and I noticed they started packing shortly after. And I said, "Well, what's going on?" They said, "We're moving. We sold a house and bought a house in Arkansas." I don't know if I was just sleeping in geography class or whatever, because I thought it was the next town over. I said, "Okay, well, yeah, let's go." And I thought maybe it was an hour, further. I got out of the truck about 3 days later. And here I was now in Van Buren, Arkansas. During that 3-day drive to Arkansas, my older cousin, Fern, he told me about Jesus. 3 days of telling me about Jesus. And he had a captive audience. We were
3 days and 3 nights, huh?
3 days. I think we were on I-40 for like ever. He was part of a lowrider crew in the Central Valley. And he was telling me how he no longer did drugs, turned in all his lowrider stuff, and not saying that's bad, but that's what he did, and was a changed man. And it impacted me, not necessarily overnight, but it left a deep impression to the point where I asked him to give me Bible studies, and I was eventually baptized as a Christian.
So was life radically different after this point?
You better believe it. It was crazy. They used to read the Bible together as a family. They used to pray before they ate. They would come together before they fell asleep and pray and ask how their day was. That was all very foreign to me. But it deeply impacted me in the way that I saw Christianity, Christians, and so forth, to the point where I wanted to leave. After I got baptized, I did my sophomore year, I finished my sophomore year of high school in Van Buren, and I wanted to go tell my family about Jesus.
So you returned back home?
I did. I went back to San Jose after I graduated from high school, and I remember the first night, fresh out of Van Buren, Arkansas, back in East San Jose, California. I was making my bed, which was the couch. Always had been my bed growing up in the living room. And my mom walked by, and I said, "Mom, can I pray for you before you go to sleep?" And she said, "What?" And I said, "Can I pray for you?" And she said, "Sure." And we started to pray together, and mid-prayer, she just broke down. And she goes, "I can't believe you're doing this." I guess it was really different in San Jose, because in Van Buren, Arkansas, my whole family was Christian. My cousins, my aunt, my uncle, we went to church together. We did Christian service together. Here I was back in the old neighborhood that I was born and raised in, basically. And it was tough. I attempted to do it on my own for a while. By this time, I was 16 years old. I found a Seventh-day Adventist church near my home, and I used to walk to church by myself, sit front row by myself. And I attempted to do it. I would take a Bible to high school. Remember, this is the same high school where all the same people that I grew up with since we were kids. And during lunch, I would go to the library and just read my Bible. And I was attempting to do it, but it was very difficult.
So what began to happen then, after you returned back home? You're talking about this initial experience you had. Hey, you're trying to be a witness. You're praying with your mom. You're reading your Bible during lunchtime.
What some folks don't realize is how deep the relationships are outside of, like, what you would call outside of the Christian circle. these are guys, the friends I grew up with, that we did some stuff together that grew us to the point of almost being just like family, if not even deeper than that. These were the same guys that would come over to my mom's house and open the refrigerator freely, and I would do the same thing at their homes. So it was definitely the type of friendship that wasn't nominal. So I say that to say that it's not like I ignored them when I got back. These were my brothers.
Right.
And so I attempted to hang out with them, but not do what they were doing. And little by little, the amount of hanging out that I was doing with this specific crowd dampened my senses. And I started little by little, it didn't happen overnight, but little by little, I started to think it was okay to participate in some of the things they were doing.
It changed you more than it changed them.
It definitely changed me.
So you eventually got into some big trouble. What happened?
It was one night where a friend of mine, it was his birthday, and he basically said, Mark, you haven't done any of these things in such a long time. You're a Christian now. We respect that, but you got to drink with us just this one night. I mean, it's my birthday. You have a forgiving God, don't you? And this and this. And I told myself it was just going to be that one night. And I drank that night. And that night literally turned into maybe 7 years of addiction. I honestly thought it was just going to be one night in my brain. But, I started drinking. Then I started smoking weed again. Then bigger stuff started happening like ecstasy, cocaine, and all that stuff. And it took me down a really deep pit. Right. And eventually I stopped going to church. I stopped reading the Bible. I stopped associating myself as a Christian. And I was one of them again.
It's so interesting. By just opening that door up again, you found yourself in this nightmare again.
Yes.
Now, eventually this climaxed, right? I mean, just the trouble. What happened?
I got involved in selling drugs again. Okay. And I was older, so a lot more influence, a lot more people were I was introduced to, and my brother introduced me to this guy whose nickname was Crazy. And Crazy was, I was maybe late 16, he was in his mid-20s, but he had everything I wanted. The nice house in the nice side of San Jose, the foreign cars, he just had it all. And according to what my brain said was what a made man looked like. And he started to instruct me and teach me on how to become him. And he liked me because I wasn't out there gang banging. I wasn't out there with a red rag or blue rag or any of that. He liked me because I looked like a pretty boy, a square, but I knew how to sell drugs. So obviously he was using me now looking back at it, but he started to instruct me and took me under his wing, and I started to become successful. I eventually started selling drugs outside of San Jose. And one night I went to Fresno, California, 3 hours away, and I did a drop. It was a little no-name town called Kalinga. And that night, we decided to go to the big city, Fresno, to go party. Unfortunately, a young man came with me that I knew from the time that we were kids. His name was Abraham. And he was a good kid. He smoked weed, but he was a good kid. And he was the only guy in the neighborhood who went to college. He had a full ride scholarship to San Jose State University and was just on the right path. But we were friends. So he came with me to Fresno. He came with me to a party. And unfortunately, on the way home, we didn't make it. I woke up the next morning, handcuffed to a hospital bed.
How old were you at the time?
I was 19.
Okay.
Yeah, fresh out of high school. Just graduated a year earlier from high school. Okay. And the sheriff was sitting, waiting for me to wake up, and he asked, "Are you Marco?" And I said, "Yes." He goes, "Oh, I'm so glad you woke up. Just wanted to let you know you killed your friend last night. I hope you have a nice life." And he just got up and walked out. And my brain didn't understand that. I saw a pair of legs next to me, but the hospital sheet was covering the upper body. Right. So I thought that was my friend. And I slowly started to dawn on me that I obviously was drinking and driving, got into a car wreck, and my friend died. My other friend who was in the car almost died, was airlifted, and barely made it alive.
Wow, so you ended up in jail?
I was there for a week in the hospital, then I went to Fresno County Jail, and I was facing 5 to 10 years in prison for vehicular manslaughter. And it was in that prison I remember seeing the little picture that they put for your mugshot, and I looked wrecked. I mean, just years of drug abuse and, And I remember seeing that picture, and the only thing I could think of was Arkansas. Because that man looked so much different than the man who came from Arkansas. And I started to make a bunch of promises to God. God, if you save me out of this one, I'll stop. If you get me out of here, out of this mess, I'll stop. And about a week after being in jail, I was told to roll up my stuff because someone had bailed me out of jail. I didn't understand how that happened. My waitress mother was not going to bail me out of jail.
Right.
So I walked out of Fresno County Jail, and sure enough, the same car was there, and Crazy got out of the car, hugged me, told me he'll take care of me. Don't worry, we'll get a lawyer. I'll only do a few years in prison. And I got into the car, and a couple of my other guys were behind, and they gave me a joint, and they said, here, you need this more than we do. And at that point, there was a little struggle because I just made all these promises to God, but these guys just took me out of jail.
And now the temptation has returned.
And it's here. And literally the very next day, got another cell phone and was back on the street. That's what I knew what to do. He paid, I think, $20,000 to get me out of jail. He told me that I had to get back to work, and that's what I did. At this time, I really was there with nothing to lose mentality. I knew without a shadow of a doubt I was going to go to prison. So I didn't really care. I started doing drugs, started still drinking and driving while out on bail, started just living recklessly. One night, almost a year after I got bailed out of jail, remember, I'm going to court almost once a month, and they're telling me the same thing, 5 to 10, 5 to 10, 5 to 10. About a year later, in September of 2010, I get a call from Crazy, and he lets me know that he's in my neighborhood, and he needs me to drop off some stuff. It was late at night, and I couldn't really make it, so I told him, hey, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to get a ride, because at this time, I didn't have a license or a car. I was mostly being driven around most of the time. But he said, man, I drove 3 hours and I paid $20,000 to get you out. I know you can make it. Obviously, it was fresh on his mind a year later. Right. And I said, I'll be there. I fell asleep looking for a ride, Anil. The next morning, someone's yelling in the phone, called me, and it's his cousin, a mutual friend of ours. And he's yelling on the phone, do you know who did it? Do you know who did it? Were you there? Were you there? And I finally stopped him and I said, did what? And he said, Crazy's dead, bro. And it dawned on me that I should have been there. I should have been there. He called me just a few hours before he was killed. And an altercation broke out. Someone took out a gun and killed him, and another person died, was shot, killed too. And a third person, pregnant girl, was hit, but she survived. And I knew I should have been there.
What's going through your mind at this moment when you realize, man, that could have been me? My life should have ended there.
I thought about Arkansas. It's weird, but I thought about Jesus. I thought about how if I would have never left Jesus, my friend Abraham would still be alive. I thought about how if I would have never left Jesus, I wouldn't be sitting where I was sitting, facing 10 years in prison, 5 to 10 years in prison. So I prayed out to God. I said, God, if there's still a place in heaven for someone like me, I need help. If you want this drug addict, if you want this drug dealer, if you want this liar, this burned every bridge, basically, I need help. And a week later, someone knocked on my mom's door. I opened the door. It was a bald-headed guy. Nothing against bald heads. I don't think there's any here, but it was undercover San Jose Police Department. Fresno County was ready to try me, bring me to trial. So they handcuffed me, said that they were going to ship me back to Fresno. They took me to Santa Clara County Department, put me in jail. And when they put me inside of my jail cell, there was a carving across the wall. So interesting. Out of all the jail cells, and what was carved on the wall was, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. And to anybody else, that would have been a coincidence that this backslidden Christian was in a jail cell with a Bible verse that was carved into the wall. But for me, it was the hand of God. Because when I was baptized in January 28th, 2006, that was the Bible verse that was read when I was baptized.
That's incredible.
And it spoke to me, and I felt God's presence. And I knelt down in that jail cell, and I asked God into my life again. I said, God, I don't really know how all of this is going to pan out, but I want to be for you. And I was bailed out a second time out of that jail cell. This time by an employer that really took a liking to me, the owner of the company, and And I started to search for God. I started to read the Bible. I started to go to every single Christian service I can go to because I knew my time was coming where I was going to face the judge.
So here you are in prison again, and you're praying, you're reading your Bible. Are you making a bunch of promises to God this time?
Not really. I just wanted to be with him. I wanted him to use me. And finally, December 16, 2011 came, and I went to the courthouse, and they convicted me of vehicular manslaughter felony. And instead of giving me 5 to 10 years in prison, they gave me 6 months of house arrest with a 5-year suspended prison sentence. No one could believe that I wasn't going to go to prison a single day for killing a young man. And I was so determined to go to prison and to be a missionary that I was so confused that I wasn't going anymore. That on the drive home with my mom, who had all my belongings in her garage, she looked at me, she goes, "You don't really look excited." Because I was confused. I said, man, I wanted to be a missionary. I wanted to go to prison and eat with them, sleep with them, and tell them about Jesus. And I made a promise. I said, God, if I can't serve you in prison, I want to serve you on the street. And that's exactly what God did.
So you got out of jail. I mean, you were thinking to yourself, I'm going to be here for a very long time. And then things change.
Yes. I even stopped paying my credit card.
So then from this point on, here you are, and now you're just like, God, I want to serve you. What did you decide to do with your life then?
So for 6 months, I went to a little Christian store, and I bought a bunch of books on theology and God and all these little things aside from the Bible. And I sat for 6 months, and I read my Bible, and I read those books. And as soon as I was done with that, I started to get integrated into a local faith community. Started to go to church. And I started to make myself available at church. And I had a pastor, Tony Rodriguez, who adopted me like a son. He still calls me his son. I still call him my father. I still talk to him 5 times a week, maybe more. So he started to take me to his Bible studies when he would go visit people, visitations in hospitals and homes, and he would just bring me along. Eventually, I got the church keys, and I started to go mow the lawn on Sunday morning and trim its hedges. And I started to get involved. But I also started to go to the same neighborhoods that I used to sell drugs at. I started to give Bible studies to people I used to smoke with. I started a Bible study at my mom's house where 11 of my friends were coming at one point. 2 of them, I believe, got baptized. I started to make myself available to the same community because they all knew me. We grew up as kids since elementary school. We smoked and beat up people together and got beat up together, like all these different experiences. Right. And I started to introduce them to Jesus. And that led to 2014, where another pivotal thing happened. In 2014, I decided that I wanted to officially join a ministry. And I went and I joined a ministry called Youth Rush, where they went door to door telling people about Jesus. So fast forward, I go to Youth Rush, the door-to-door Christian ministry. And then after I finished in 2014, I went to a Bible college for 2 years, which was a miracle that my probation officer, I'm on felony probation this whole time. I'm surprised they even let me.
Did the people around you know this?
Only my boss. And I'm surprised that he allowed me to go to these Christian ministries. But he believed in me, and he believed that I truly was a changed man by God's grace. So I went to a Bible college in Arizona, and after 2 years, they sent me to work at a church. And I remember my boss telling me, my supervisor, he said, there's a young lady that's working there as well. She's your age. If you do anything dumb, I'm going to change you churches. And I said, I've heard about her. I've seen her. She's not my type. Those were the famous last words. I called him 2 months later saying, I want to marry this girl. Like, is there anything that can change about what you told me? And so I worked there for about a year alongside her doing ministry. And I realized she loved God and loved people. And that was enough for me. And so I asked her to marry me after 8 months of dating. I'm not saying that's what everyone should do, but that's what I did. And we went to Los Angeles to support ministry there together as a newly married couple. And a few years later, we were blessed with our first baby boy, whose name is Abraham.
Wow.
And that's our first baby boy. I named him after my friend that was lost in that car accident as a reminder of God's grace.
Did you ever run into the family of Abraham again?
I tried to, but I think it was too early after the accident, and they declined to speak with me. Obviously, this is the neighborhood.
Right.
So we all know somebody to know somebody that's still connected to somebody.
Right.
And I did attempt to speak with them, and they declined at that time. And I would love to go and visit them.
Right.
And just say, I'm sorry.
Right.
I'm sorry for the pain that I brought to your family and the life that was taken too early.
Well, I'm sure the opportunity will present itself at the right time.
Yes.
Thank you, Marco, for your beautiful story. I know we're going to hear more. Marco's story reminds us that even when we fall far, God's grace reaches farther. Sometimes Thanksgiving comes from looking back, not at the pain, but at the path God brought us through. Before we go to our next segment, I want to invite you to visit our website at hopetv.org/hopeatnight, where you can view previous episodes and also download this season's free gift. So be sure to check it out. When we return, we're going to our studio audience for their questions. Don't go away. Welcome back to Hope at Night. We've heard the incredible testimonies of Nelson Quijano and Marco Topete, two men who are grateful for God's grace in their lives. Now we'd like to turn to our live audience to see what questions they have for Nelson and Marco. Who's up first? Right over there.
Nelson, were the members of your family who stayed behind in El Salvador able to remain safe during the Civil War and afterwards?
Yes, my whole family was safe by the grace of God. So they didn't have any more problem with the communists. And they were good.
Wow, that's really incredible to know that your family was safe throughout that. How long was this Civil War?
We took 12 years.
12 years, wow. I'm sure they witnessed a lot of things happening around them.
Oh, yes.
Wow.
Things that I missed after 1984. I didn't see no more of that.
Yeah.
But then my family went through that, and finally they're safe. They're all safe.
Right.
They'll have kids now, my brothers and sisters, and mom and dad, they're still alive.
Good. Still being fruitful, huh? Yeah. That's wonderful to hear. Any other questions? Right over there.
Marco, did you ever have to go to rehab to curb your substance abuse issue?
Yeah, I did 365 AA meetings in 365 days. And sure, it was encouraged by a judge. But after sitting in that room for that long, I started to truly realize that I had a serious problem with addiction. My most difficult addiction to overcome wasn't the weed, wasn't the cocaine, wasn't all these steps. It was actually alcohol, because it's so readily available everywhere you go. But I did enroll myself into Kaiser for a chemical dependency recovery program, and that definitely helped as well. But the biggest difference maker was getting a sponsor in a 12-step program that held me accountable. And big shout out to Sal, who was that sponsor for me.
You know, when you think about like addictions and the intense struggles that people have, especially with some of these more negative, harsh addictions we're talking about here, what are some things you would say to someone who perhaps is struggling and feels just this pull towards these things?
Accountability is huge in working a program. You got to work a program. And I'm talking about AA, NA, a chemical dependency recovery program. There's even Celebrate Recovery, which is more faith-based now too. But working a program is essential because it holds you accountable. And the second thing is know your boundaries. I don't put myself in positions where partying, drugs, or alcohol are primarily their business. Right. I went to go get hot wings one day with my wife at Yard House because I love their Gardein hot wings. And when I was waiting there, I've never gone at nighttime, but it looked like a club. And I told my wife, we got to get out of here. She said, we've been waiting for so long. I said, no, you don't get it. We got to get out of here because it still draws me.
Right.
After 11 years of sobriety, it still draws me.
And sometimes people around us don't always understand that, what's going on in the heart and the mind in those moments. Any other questions?
This question is for Nelson. So Nelson, you spoke about turning your back on your past mistakes and turning around and hugging God and hugging Jesus. So do you think that we should try to forget our past mistakes, or should we remember and hold on to them so we don't make the same mistakes?
Definitely, you need to let it go. Just let it go. And there is one Bible test that I have on my table, that he said, Hebrews 12:15. Look what it says. Looking careful, lest anyone fall short of the grace of God. Let any root of bitterness springing up cause trouble, and by this may become defiled. I mean, those root of bitterness that we have in the past, we should just let it go. Otherwise, it's gonna blind your vision. It's gonna blind your future. And God already forgive you. What else you want to ask for it? I mean, as long as God forgives me, it's gone. Everything should just let it go. I mean, it will bring you the past. It will bring you memories. But when those comes, I just think about what I was before, what I am now. Yeah.
Marco, would you add to that?
I agree with what brother here said. I in regards to sobriety, I think there is a healthy recognition of what it was to make sure you don't go back there again.
What does that look like practically?
Practically speaking, there are times where I'll go into a store and I'll see a certain type of beer that I used to love. And when I walk by it, I'm like, man, that looks good. And how that looks like practically, I think about my family, my wife, my children, and I think about where alcohol led me in the past. And I'm like, not that good though. And I just keep going.
Right. Excellent. Any other questions? Right over there.
My question is for Nelson. How did God call you into testimony?
Remember that time that I said that I was in a discotheque and I heard that voice saying, you don't belong here? That night, and that's one thing that I didn't say, I ran to my grandma's house and I was all bleeding. My sweater, it was a white sweater, I was all bleeding. And when she looked at me, she didn't say a word. She just gave me a big hug and she said, son, you're safe, don't worry. At that day, that night, I just keep on hearing that voice, you don't belong here. And that's when I feel the first call of God, saying, I need you for something else. And that's when I started working a little bit more with the church, with the youth people. One thing that I didn't say, Anil, and that's one thing that I want you to hear. Before I went to the discotheque that night, I had just become from a youth retreat, and Pastor Roger made an appeal. And he said, whoever wants to join God, whoever wants to serve God, pass at the front. And I remember I went on the front, and then when I come down from Camp Wawana, I had that friend saying, come on, it's your last night. Let's go and drink. Let's go and have something different. And that's what happened. And I think that was the first night that I heard that call. You don't belong here. I need you for someone else. And that's when I decided to study theology and become a pastor. Yeah.
It's really fascinating, when you respond to God's grace, how quickly do these temptations come flooding in?
And one thing, I used to wear an earring right here on this left ear, and it changed everything. It only took me 24 hours to think different. Don't ask me how. I'm not a superhuman, but something happened. Something happened by the grace of God that may change my mind and say, I want to serve you, God. I want to be someone else. I need to be, my testimony needs to help some other people so they can know that God is real, that God exists, that God is not dead. Yeah.
Any other questions? Right over there.
Marco, it sounds like God gave you so many chances to turn your life around with seemingly minimal consequences given the circumstances. Why do you think some are afforded those mercies, whereas many aren't?
One thing that I do share, especially when sharing such a dramatic story, is there are still some deep consequences in terms of damage that is left despite of God's grace, mercy, and forgiveness. I have no doubt in my mind that God has forgiven me, that I'm a new creature in Christ. At the same time, there are deep wounds that are left because of addiction. As I mentioned, the stores, right? Beer aisles, can't go eat at certain restaurants past certain times because it just draws me. And even in my marriage, my wife and I have had to do some serious work because freshly married, I realized that all the things I was practicing before Jesus were still my way of thinking without me knowing it, right? So definitely, it's made marriage more difficult. It's made walking with God more difficult, even to this day. I don't know why some are able to leave that lifestyle and embrace God, while others, no matter, die in the lifestyle. I actually don't know. What it does seem to me is living or practicing that lifestyle is very dangerous, because I must admit, my story is sort of an outlier, where not everyone who enters into drug addiction, not everyone who enters into selling drugs, not everyone who participates in organized crime necessarily then have this huge redemption story. That's one of the questions I want to ask God. Why me? Why couldn't I have died in that car instead of Abraham? Why is it that certain of my friends who attempted Christianity or attempted God are now back to the same things? Some things that have helped me, I feel, is leaving my environment. The transition from going to San Jose to Fresno, from Fresno to Arkansas. I mean, talk about leaving your environment. I didn't know anyone other than the nucleus family that took me in, or even the transition of then participating in that ministry youth rush. I didn't share this, but I was on the brink of leaving the church in 2014. In fact, I didn't go to church for like 3 months before I was hired to go knock on doors to tell people about Jesus. I feel like I was on the brink because that environment is strong. And God allowed me to go to that program. It was a miracle story. I've been told no twice by my probation officer because I couldn't leave San Jose. But he said yes the third time, and I was on the brink of leaving the church. So if there's someone out there who really wants to change the direction of their life and they're deeply involved in some of the things I mentioned, you need a serious change. And we can't pretend that by your own good, strong will, you can do this. You need to get out of that environment. You need to move. And that's oftentimes what's the most difficult for people, is to get out of that environment.
Right, and I appreciate some of those thoughts you just shared too, and it's the understanding too that, regardless of the circumstances that happen to us, whether we're freed from jail or stuck there an additional, few more years, you have this promise of God that He'll be with you and help you through this in whatever takes place. Somebody once said, we're free to choose, but we're not always free from those consequences. I mean, there's just a reality that we live in that sometimes it's like, the miracle story doesn't happen in that moment. The answered prayer doesn't come at the moment you need it, but then you have that promise God will be with you through this thing. And at the end, it will work out for your good.
Or you don't hear, Anil, how those things affect you even after becoming a Christian.
Right.
And how the deep wounds take years, maybe even until Jesus returns, in order to find that true healing that needs to take place for the individual.
Right. Those consequences are there. Any other questions? Right over there.
Marco, can you please take us through the process of how you were able to forgive yourself and remain in a healthy state of mind after the car accident?
It's all about having the proper tools, right? And I didn't have them. So after I got out of jail and the first time, I handled it by drinking. And I remember, I grew up in a culture where men don't cry. I grew up in a culture where you don't share your feelings. So I used to find my retreat in the shower. When I would shower, I would cry. Every time I showered, just thinking of my friend Abraham and thinking of others too that I destroyed because of my direct or indirect influence. You would think that he would have got that he has an addiction to alcohol, so therefore he should stop drinking. I drank probably for 2 more years after I killed my friend. And a lot of that was self-medicating, not knowing how to deal with that. So how did I forgive myself? It definitely was a process. And that process, I feel, really started to gain traction when I started to walk with Jesus. I remember the first time, I've heard about the cross all the time, but I remember the first time I truly sat there and I said, I'm going to read the entire book of Matthew. And when I finally got to the portion of the Bible where Jesus was being mistreated, abused, and so forth, and eventually led to the cross. I remember the first time I truly sat there at my mom's kitchen table, and it dawned on me that Jesus had gone through that for me. And I was weeping like a baby and just saying, thank you, Jesus, for doing that for me. And that's kind of my journey into the healing. Yeah.
That's wonderful.
It is.
You know, Nelson, Marco, I said this before, I'll say it again, they can make movies about your life. And just thinking about the ways that God stepped in and intervened and is still working your life. There's a beautiful promise in Psalms that says, to the Lord belongs escapes from death. Right? That's beautiful. And that's definitely been fulfilled in your life.
Amen.
When we think of Thanksgiving, we usually think of food, family, and football. But tonight, I'm grateful for grace. Grace that shows up when you least expect it, in a dance club, in a jail cell, or even in the back of a cab, and says, you belong to me. It's God's grace alone that can turn your chaos into a calling and your past into a purpose. When you put your life in God's hands, He doesn't just restore, He redeems. Nelson and Marco remind us that God doesn't just save us, He sends us. So if you're watching this and thinking, it's too late for me, just remember, as long as you have breath, God still has a plan. Your story still matters, your future isn't finished, and purpose is still possible. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time on Hope at Night.